Hello, everyone. Welcome to Latter-day Struggles. So excited to be here with all of you today, and I'm really excited to welcome you here with me today, Heather Sundahl. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we are here on a mission, the two of us, to talk to you a little bit about something that is kind of exciting that's happening here on the Latter-day Struggles platform. And if Heather is not familiar to you, she will become familiar to you because I'm going to have her on the podcast every once in a while. I don't really know exactly how often. She has been on the podcast before with Katie Rich talking about their beautiful book, the 50-year anniversary edition. Well, I'm going to have to give you what's the title exactly, Heather? Go for it.
50 years of Exponent 2.
Okay. So she was on episodes 281 and 282 talking about the history of the Exponent magazine and all things Mormon feminism. Heather kind of, in my opinion, is sort of like one of my most significant mentors in terms of the value and even like what Exponent is. We're about the same age, but I came into Mormon feminism a good generation after Heather. She's really like one of those sort of early feminists, at least from, if you compare her and me. And so I really, really enjoyed learning about Mormon feminism as sort of a late adopter, shall we say. And so that's a fun couple of episodes for you to go back and listen to if you want to really look into for yourself that. But this is sort of, we're pivoting because Heather is a woman who has many a talent. And I met her a few years ago when she interviewed me to be in an article in the Exponent. And then one thing led to another, and we became friends. And I learned that she was in graduate school to become a clinical mental health worker. And it was at the same time that this platform was growing. And I had my eye on her as someone that I would love to work with down the road, helping me with some of the clinical work or the consulting, coaching, therapy. It kind of depends on who you're working with and where you are, what you want to call it. But Heather is a clinical mental health worker now. And I kind of told her a long time ago, whenever you're ready, if you want to work with me a little bit on Latter-day Struggles, so that especially people that live in Utah who want to do some individual work or some couples work, they can have somebody who's local, let me know. And it took her a little while to, work through all the things that she needed to do professionally and whatnot. And here we are. I'm so excited she's here.
Yay!
Yes. And so today's episode, really more so than anything, is to help you all get to know Heather and fall in love with her the way I already have. And if you already know and love Heather and are involved in Mormon feminism, then this is just going to be, an ongoing opportunity for you to get to know Heather more from that perspective, but also sort of understand like how she came into becoming a therapist. So that was kind of a long and drawn out introduction, but I want to just turn the mic back over to you, Heather. And will you just give us all a little bit of an introduction about you? And I'm talking, just give us kind of an overview of your story.
Okay. So I am a Southern Californian and was raised in an LDS family that believed in the church and education, and not necessarily in that order. Education was very, very big. And my parents, my dad, bless him, was very much a product of patriarchy and had some pretty rigid ideas about what boys and girls could do. So girls could study all the same things as boys, but when it came time for career, she was supposed to defer to her husband. and privilege his education. And so you were really kind of getting two messages in my house, like get this education, do really well, but always remember that whatever you do as a woman needs to take a back seat. And so I watched my mom, and this was in the 70s and the 80s when the Relief Society was like, it was a different beast than it is now. It was like a full-time job being Relief Society president. My mom was putting on conferences and dinners. It's like she was CEO of the Relief Society presidency. And so I watched her. I had friends whose mothers worked full-time as realtors or nurses or whatever. And my mom was probably gone more than their moms were in her work with Relief Society. And it drove me a little bit crazy because I'm like, wait, what's going on here? The message is stay home and be with your children. But if the church asks you to do something, that absolutely has to come first. And then family is going to be second. So you had all of these weird messages going on about, what mothers are supposed to do, but then what they did in actuality. And I look back on that and I think my mom, she needed that work. Everybody needs meaning, something meaningful. Everybody needs to feel like what they do matters. And for my mom, Relief Society organizing, putting on that did that for her. And I think it made her a happier person and a better mother. So, like, here's a little example. My sister and we babysat for this woman, and we're at a wedding reception, and she's there, and she went up to my dad and said, "Oh, Mr. Bickmore, I just want to tell you how much I love your daughters, Angela and Heather." And he goes, "Oh, wait till you meet my sons." So, yeah. So I got these sort of conflicting messages. So I go off to BYU, and on the one hand, I really want to dive into all of this knowledge, but I was raised in this way thinking that as a woman, the potential that I can fulfill is so much less satisfying than if I were a man. And so I felt in some ways a little bit male identified, where I kind of like, "Oh, women are silly. Like, the guys are cool. They're the ones who are smart." And that's sometimes, and that's is a different conversation. That's sometimes how you end up with what I call mistresses of patriarchy. Women who, because in patriarchy, there is so little real power for women that when they get a slice of it, they feel like they really have to dig down and protect it. And that means reinforcing the people in power. And it means kind of turning on your fellow women and just really reinforcing, the male stuff. So I go to BYU and I'm taking really interesting classes. I'm taking that, 9 credit hour colloquium class where you have a physics professor and English professors and psychologists, and there's Eugene England started it, if that kind of gives you a feel. And I'm just loving all this exploration. And then one night I went to a fireside at the Marriott Center, and it was a woman speaking. And I was like, okay, I'm going to show up because we need to try to support women. And I go, and this woman gives a talk. I don't remember who she was. I don't even remember what the whole topic was, but I do remember this line. She said, "Sisters, women don't need to grow up to be astronomers because we can sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to our children." And I went home and I told my roommate, and we were laughing and we were laughing. And the next thing I know is I'm sobbing. And I'm just like, what, what is going on? So I do a study abroad in Israel, and I meet some really cool people, some really cool professors. And I just got to know Jesus. And the message was, Jesus doesn't see me as any less. Jesus wants me to learn and study and grow. And so I came back and I started taking all these classes on feminism and on um, non-canonical literature, like literature Native American and Arab, and so learning about these different perspectives, and it blew my mind. it really blew my mind and put me on this path. And so then I got a master's, and what I studied was storytelling. And the way we tell our story shapes everything. There is not one narrative. There's a set of facts, there's a set of circumstances, and how you put those pieces together, how you frame it, makes all the difference. And that's really where I got started with this sort of feminist female empowerment. And then I got married. My then husband and I moved to Boston in 1996, where I was introduced to the Exponent 2 magazine, and I started reading articles as part of the readers committee and writing. And as I started editing with them, that's where I saw I can help people take their story that they have and help them frame that story in such a way that that story empowers them, that that story helps them be happier, move away from pain, process trauma, make sense of things that seem senseless. And so my whole adult life, I have been working in story. So then, of course, I have 4 kids, and then the kids' friends come over and you talk to them. And so, like a lot of moms, I did a lot of informal counseling, and with friends too, where people come to you and share things. And one of my, I don't know if it's a gift or I don't know what it is that I can listen to someone tell me something really uncomfortable and I don't have to make it all right. Because people, if you go to someone and you tell them your thing and then they immediately try to start fixing it for you, you feel ultimately like they think you're helpless and you don't want to share, because a lot of us just have to kind of grapple with those things. We don't go to people because we're like, fix this problem for me. We're going to them because that very act of telling it helps us wrestle with it. So I worked as a writer and editor. I taught English at Boston University and Harvard when I was out there. And then we moved to Utah in 2018. And I just felt like it was time for a change. I just thought, I I want to become a therapist. I feel like I've been a fake therapist. And who knows if I'm harming people in the way that I'm doing it. I'm like, I actually need to get some real skills. And so I went to UVU. I wanted to go to UVU because I have a daughter who's queer. I have lots of queer people in my life, and I wanted to study at a university that would give me all of the resources and education that I would need for that population. And maybe I could have gotten it at BYU. I don't know, but I was nervous. I was just a little bit afraid because when you have a school where queer people can't hold hands on campus, it just seemed like maybe there would be some of that would filter in to the education. And so I went to UVU, loved it, and became a marriage and family therapist. So, and now I'm fully licensed and I'm still dealing in stories. People come to me with their stories and they feel trapped by them. They feel like they don't know how to get out of them. And so therapy is this really beautiful process where you help people maybe see parts of the narrative that they didn't notice before, ways in which they have already started to give themselves clues about what they really want and what the way forward is in a healthy manner. So that's me in a nutshell, a little bit of my kind of feminist path and religious path and career path.
That is so fascinating and beautiful. And I will say I knew some of that, but I think there are a few things in there that I'm hearing for the first time myself. And something that I'm kind of delighted about as I listen to you, Heather, is that the theme of narrative is so profound to me. And incidentally, I'm reworking some of my curriculum in some of my groups uh, because these are curriculum based. And right this very minute, well, not this minute I'm with you, but like literally as of like yesterday and this morning, what I'm actually weaving into this curriculum is actually the the foundation of healing through narrative.
Mhm.
And so I'm smiling because I could not agree more. And just to sort of like heighten and underscore something that you're saying is that the creation of narrative is not only does it sort of feel good, but there's like neurological backing to that, that the brain heals as we create narrative and we move
Yeah.
disorganized sensation out of the right brain and into the left brain as we create narrative. So there's actually like in this, day and age where we kind of are understanding better what the brain is actually doing when we're healing. This is the real deal. There is something very, very special happening. And I could not love more that your background and your love of storytelling led you uh, in each era of your life
Mhm.
to like a deepening and a broadening of your own gifts and skills in like helping, like not only like, I guess to me I see it as like the awakening of your own soul, like the
Mhm.
becoming of a self in its own right, which is enough, but then
Yeah.
also you're expanding that and using this to be instrumental in the healing of other people around you through narrative. So I just really love this. And if I may, I want to ask you a couple of other questions to sort of continue to better understand.
Can I
Mm,
can I tell you one of my favorite quotes first?
yes.
So I don't know if Isaac Isaac Dennison, also known as Karen von Blixen, Meryl Streep in Out of Africa, if that contextualizes it for people. She was Danish storyteller, and one of her phrases that I love so much is she says, all sorrows can be born if we put them into story." That story is gives meaning to the meaningless and helps us make sense. Like if you can make it into a story, I mean, that's why story has existed. That's why we have cave paintings. I mean, from the second we were here on this earth in some coherent form, we're trying to make meaning. And that's what stories are, is meaning making.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful. And it's so true, especially in the context of the work that you and I do, having been so deeply immersed in Mormonism in
Mhm.
ways that have been so like profound and formative to us, but also having the courage as women still choosing to be invested in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and wanting to create forums where the healthy processing of the
Mhm.
faith journey is encouraged, is available, and is something that you and I think, are trying to normalize, right? Because I think sometimes there's a temptation in authoritarian styled patriarchies that
Mhm.
they get to own the narrative and we plug ourselves in ways that sort of amplify what the external narrative deems appropriate
Yeah.
for its own good, right? And so we're over here going, no, we own our narrative. And I know that Exponent too is very committed to that. And so
Mhm.
you're kind of doing this in your own way, as now a therapist, but you've been doing this for a long time through Exponent. So talk to us, if you would, a little bit about like your passion to continue to create spaces where women and men can make meaning of their faith journey, their LDS flavored faith experience. So talk a little bit about that,
Yes.
if you would.
So as you were talking, I was thinking about how I teach Relief Society, which is, I think, the greatest calling, just to be with women and be able to kind of, um, in this intimate space, kind of have these wrestles. And every lesson I teach, I always talk about our origin story. So what's an origin story? With Spider-Man. It's the fact that Uncle Henry is killed and he could have stopped the guy, but he didn't because he was being selfish. And so for Spider-Man, everything kind of comes back to his aunt and uncle and those choices. Our origin story is Adam and Eve. Our origin story is all about a woman having the courage to create change, having the courage to make a decision that she knew could get her in trouble, but making it anyway, not choosing safety, not choosing obedience, but choosing that boldness and being kind of, for her, I think it was being congruent. It was that integrity of like, okay, this other stuff has to happen and it can't happen how we are now. So I have to make this choice and live with the consequences. And so I look at Eve as just this, she's a badass, and I've reminded the women like, here is Eve boldly going forward. And it's not all about staying contained in kind of the script, but that sometimes you have to go off script. Sometimes you have to make choices that's gonna rock the boat. But because that static, that stasis, never choosing, being so afraid of making the wrong choice that you make no choice, I mean, that is just a path to unhappiness. Like we have to be able to move forward, and as you and I know, that looks different for everyone. Again, there's not a script. It's not the case that if you do these things, everything's going to be awesome. So the script for a Mormon woman, go to BYU, get married in the temple, have babies. I did that. I totally did that. And then in my early 50s, I found myself divorced. That was never part of the script. And I fought so hard to stay in a marriage because I wanted that script to work. I'd been told my whole life that if you do these things, that, your children will think celestial, or whatever the phrases are, covenant path, like whatever the phrase du jour. And I found myself absolutely like, okay, so now I'm single. All four of my children are not part of the church. And how do I make sense of this? How do I? And I just, I wrestle with that, but I realize that it's my narrative. It's not someone else's, it's mine. And I've had to sort of figure, have I made choices that I've learned from? And it's not that have all my choices been right, but have I made choices that I've really learned from? And the answer is yes. And I like where I'm at right now. I like who I am. Um, I've had hard things happen, but those hard things have enabled me to see life in different ways and I mean, this is going to sound awful, but we all know people who live in a bubble that like everything somehow seems to go right for them. And I love these people. They're not that interesting. The interesting people are the ones that poop happens, that, stuff kind of falls apart. They have these real struggles. Your friend who's been through cancer, your friend who's had a child who's suicidal. Like those are the people that when stuff hits the fan, you turn to those people because they're not going to judge you because they recognize that so many things in life are not your fault, but they're your problem. I'm saying that all the time to my clients. I have clients whose parents, I work with teenagers in a residential treatment. So I have clients who've been abandoned by their parents, who've been trafficked by their parents, who at, 10 got addicted to meth, like really, really hard things. And none of those things are their fault. They didn't choose those things, but it's their responsibility to get out of it. So at a certain point, you have to own it all, whether or not it started out as your choice. So,
It's not your fault, but it is your problem. I feel like
mhm.
that's going to go up on the list of like, top 5 choices for my next tattoo.
I know. I'm like, I think about that and I'm like, ITYF, but I'm like, no, it doesn't work. So it's tattooed on my heart.
That's right. That's right. I hope all of you out there listening are getting a sense of why Heather is so near and dear to me, and why I love and respect you so much, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really do. What I'm feeling right now as I listen to you is an incredibly strong woman, a differentiated woman, a woman with a voice, a woman who knows her value and is choosing to carve a space in the world through your own unique gifts and talents, and are not afraid to be exactly who you are. And you are an interesting anomaly, if I may say, right? Like, in other words, you are choosing to be present in the LDS Church, teaching Relief Society, while concurrently holding a very differentiated view of yourself, and making that work because you get to choose how you live your life, and that is nobody else's business but your own, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so if you would, I'm intrigued with hearing a little bit more about how do you navigate the tension that you may, or maybe you don't feel it, but I guess I maybe let me just project onto you what my sense is that, like, wow, she is bravely spending time, and even being given the floor in and of itself is actually unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
For
Mm-hmm.
Mormonism. And I believe you're in Utah Valley, if I'm not mistaken.
I am.
And so this in and of itself is very fascinating, that you're walking a bit of a tightrope here, owning yourself, encouraging women in many ways, seemingly, to have a healthy relationship with their own potential, with their own voices. And you're doing so in our church, in the LDS Church, which isn't really well known for, like, giving women the floor to do that very thing. So walk us through, first of all, your internal process, but how is how is this how is this done? How is this happening?
So, one of the things that my co-author Katie Rich is always saying about Exponent 2 is they never put ideological purity over community. That you always remember that these are fellow sisters, human beings, and we don't all have to think the same. So I lived in Boston for 22 years. And so I was in a ward where they would call an atheist to be a seminary teacher because they needed it and that person was willing. And so I just got used to that things didn't have to be ideologically pure. Like the first day we were in that ward, my then husband said, I was sitting at elders quorum and this one man starts talking about interfaith outreach and how we need to like work with the Catholics and we need to assign ourselves a neighbor to like home teach and all of this stuff. And my husband's thinking, oh my gosh, I love this fringy guy. And then someone turns to the man and goes, oh, Bishop, I think you're right. Like that was the bishop. Like, so things were done so differently there. And so it really taught me that it's okay, like whoever you are, wherever you are, like it's okay to show up like that, and that it actually benefits the community to have a diversity of voices and a diversity of perspectives. And it's good to have people disagree with you and, think things differently. Um, so when I teach, I feel like I'm teaching whatever I'm teaching, but I feel like I'm also trying to give people permission to be more honest with themselves about where they're at. So if we're talking about the temple, I will bring up and say, I know the temple is a hard place for a lot of people because it is. And I'm not going to pretend like it's not. And that gives the people in the audience who feel that way, they're like, wait, I'm allowed. Other people think this way, and so, and my secret weapon is Jesus, because anything I say that I think might be considered controversial or in some ways off script, you can find an example with Jesus. So if I'm talking about self-care and the importance of having compassion for yourself because as women, the worst thing an LDS woman can be is selfish. Like that is like you could be the ward harlot And as long as you're like bringing people meals, like you're okay. But if you're selfish, like that is not okay. And so Mormon women have a very hard time giving themselves permission to do self-care. And so I always bring up the Savior after one of the fishes and the loaves encounters, sending the apostles on a ship in Galilee, and he goes up into the mountains and basically takes a nap and does some self-care. Like he had to get away. And then when he shows up, there's a tempest and everything is a hot mess. And all the disciples say to him, "Oh my gosh, Jesus, why did you leave us? This never would have happened if you had just been here," which is what your children say when you leave and do anything, you come back. And then you as a mom think, "Oh, I can't leave because everything's a mess. Everything falls apart when I leave. I'm not allowed to go to the gym, or I'm not allowed to have a weekend with girls, or take a pottery class, whatever it is." But you look at the Savior absolutely carved out time for his self-care, for nurturing, for studying, for meditation, for prayer. And if the Savior needs it, certainly we do too. So people sometimes I'll say something and I can see them being uncomfortable. And then I bring it to Jesus. Like Jesus's first miracle was at a party. He turned water into wine at a party. Jesus values social things. He values people being comfortable and having a good time. So I think that we can sometimes get so this idea in our head that everything has to be self-sacrifice. We take that phrase, "we can do hard things," and we turn it into everything has to be hard. And it doesn't. It doesn't. Yes, there's lots of hard things and we're amazing, but sometimes like put the hand cart down and do some square dancing. Like the pioneers did that. Every night they sang, they danced, they had fun. And so we have it in our pool of resources, scripture, doctrine, but we don't always lean into it because we become so and our Christian origin story is the Adam and Eve, but our Mormon origin story are these pioneers and Nauvoo and all this hardship. And sometimes we can really feel like our job is to suffer.
Thank you so much. Love your wisdom. Love your wisdom. There's so many places I would love to go and be tempted to talk about in terms of maybe another podcast. You and I talk a little bit about how you do this thing at church with so much courage and confidence and differentiation. I love that topic, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. I want to circle us back to as I take you in and listen to what you bring in terms of your story, your passion for the creation of narrative, your own, quite frankly, complex background. I mean, you've been through a lot as a Mormon woman. How do you bring that to the therapy room, or to, if we were to, I guess, thinking about the wisdom and the diversity of your experiences? You're still active in the LDS church, and yet you're clearly a very, very complex thinking woman who offers space for people to have any experience that they need to have and to process through this. Talk us through that. If somebody were wanting to reach out to you because they want some individual work, or even help with their marriage.
Yeah. So in in the therapy space, your first job is to listen. Your first job is to just really try to build rapport and connect and get to know people. And there are times where at that place and time, and it may not be forever, but at that place and time, certain relationships are very harmful. And the person who's in it, like let's just take some of my clients here. Some of them will say to me, "I don't want to do family therapy." Every time I'm with my mom, she doesn't listen. I just come away feeling bad about myself, or I get angry and I don't like who I am. And so then we'll pull back, we can work on some skills, but it may be that some people, the healthiest thing they can do is to distance themselves from their parents. It may be that the parents can't accommodate them, can't see them, can't accept them for who they are. I was meeting with a trans client whose parent is absolutely against them doing any kind of hormone replacement, any kind of hormone treatment, any T or anything, not even talking surgery. And I just, if this parent can't soften, then this kid is really going to have to find a way to function on their own, to kind of get on their own, maybe do Job Corps, do something else. And I feel like it's like that with the LDS church, that some people, the relationship has become so toxic. I mean, I have friends who cannot walk into an LDS church without practically going into a panic attack. And I wouldn't encourage them to do that. I mean, maybe they want to do some exposure therapy, but it would have to be very slow, and the goal may not be to get them in the pews, but just to be able to show up for a nephew's homecoming if that's what they really want to do. And other people, they really want to stay LDS, and it is super important to them at this place and time. And again, I never make anything permanent because we're all evolving and changing, and what's right for you now might not be right for you in 10 years. And so, I mean, this is like people are like, are you still in the church? I'm like, I am right now. And I can't predict what's going to happen in the future, Heather. But so I think with clients, it's like you really have to help them figure out what they need for healing. And it may require a separation, and the separation may be temporary or it may be permanent. And for some people, the essential part of the healing is finding a way for them to stay, because for them that is so important. And it's same as in a marriage. Like, you have clients come to you and you want them to figure out, can you make this work in a way where you can be healthy and happy? Or is this going to eventually take a huge toll on you and the children? And so it's not like, oh, staying is good or leaving is good. It's that in every situation, you have to help people weigh all of these different things and figure out what is going to work for them for their healing and growth.
Okay. Love it. Love it. Loving. I'm having just like not that I needed one, but like a yet another witness, a second, third, fourth, I don't know, that you are precisely what I believe I stand for. Why I've pivoted my whole career, and on my bad days, I'll say to my husband, I've blown up my whole life here, and yours too, and everybody else's around. Like this Latter-day Struggles platform has impacted us in so many significant ways. But when I listen to you, I think to myself, this is so important that for some people on the faith journey here in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they've never been given the autonomy and the trust to make a choice for themselves about what is best for them. It's never happened. They've never been exposed to that. And what we're trying to do is empower people to realize that it was within them all of the time, and they
Yeah.
just need to realize it.
Yeah. I really do believe that everyone, I mean, call it the light of Christ, call it whatever you want, that everybody has a compass inside them
Yes.
that will kind of guide them. But some of these compasses are buried so deep that there's like, a chunk of dirt that's keeping that needle from, pointing true north. And that as people do this work and start to trust the compass, I mean, I think a lot of people have this fear that if they trust the compass, God will be mad. And I don't see that at all. I don't see that. I see God as a parent. You know, you've got these heavenly parents or creators or however you envision deity. Deity want us to be happy. They really do. And I think that being true to yourself, that integrity, I mean, that's how the church was started. It started with a kid trying to use his compass to figure out what church to go to, and it took him to an entirely different experience. And again, that's another part of our origin story is that, and we all, I think, have an obligation to pursue, and fear is our enemy. I think that most of the time when we're feeling fearful, it is not our conscience or the universe. It's fear of these worldly things. It's fear of disappointing parents. It's fear of being perceived as apostate or unrighteous or selfish or, whatever it is. And fear is not compatible with peace in the spirit. And most of the time in the scriptures, when it talks about fear, it's more that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. It's more of fear as in awe and respect. And the fear and anxiety, to me, that more lines up with the opposition, however you want to frame that. And so, and people who have some, OCD and scrupulosity, it's so fear-based. And so it's really hard to move away from fear, but it's so liberating. When I kind of get stuck, I sometimes have to stop and just say, what am I feeling? And if it's fear, I'm like, okay, that's not a good enough reason to stop. I've got to keep going.
Yeah. To circle back to what you were just saying about the compass, I love that. And I would actually go so far as to say, I feel that God is the compass, that the God within us
Yes, they're
is,
united.
yes, it's
Yes,
one and the same. And
yes.
so to help ourselves and one another simply just realize, and I love the word realize, to make more real
Mhm.
that which always was, which is the compass itself is the divine within us that we are learning how to access and expand. And for so many of us, that was never revealed to us.
Mm-mm.
And that's why I think the fear enters in this prospect of taking stock of what we've experienced and where we are in our life at this particular moment in time, and recognizing that I can determine for myself how to make sense of and move forward, really in reference to anything that I'm going through. But here on the Latter Day Struggles platform, what we do is, among other things, but I will say most of the people that I work with, and that you will be helping me with, especially with people that come uh, to the platform from Utah wanting individual or couples work, is they're wanting somewhere where they can, quite frankly, gain the confidence in themselves
Mhm.
to know how to access the divine within and then decide how to move forward accordingly. And I think to sort of, again, I'm kind of keep circling back to a few things you said here and there, but I'm really loving how one thing that you said that I could not feel stronger about, I mean, I just feel really strongly, is like in Mormonism, it is very hard to untangle the differentiation journey because it is so deeply embedded within us, and also it's embedded around us. And so for your population, supposing we have, I don't know, let's just say people listen to this and they're from Salt Lake area, Utah Valley, Logan, right? They're really frequently surrounded by friends, loved ones, not only just their own families, but families, extended family, cousins. I mean, they don't know how to navigate a faith journey in the context of relationships. And I tell you what,
Yeah.
that is really hard. Like, that is really hard to sort of take ownership of one's own journey, which matters a ton, but connection and community also matters a ton. They both matter. And so to
They do.
navigate that, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And it isn't quite so simple as just sort it out inside and then move accordingly.
No,
Yeah, it doesn't work
no.
that way.
I mean, community and belonging is absolutely core
Yeah.
and essential to who we are. And losing that can be more traumatic than almost anything else. And so there is so much at stake when people are wrestling with all these ideas and trying to figure out and family sometimes unwittingly send messages of like, I won't love you anymore, or I won't love you as much, or I will be really, which again are all fear-based.
Yeah.
I'll be really disappointing to you. I had one client who he had left the church and he was terrified and he was struggling from depression and he was terrified to tell his mom that he was depressed because he said she's going to gloat a little bit. She's going to be like, well, you're depressed because you left the church. I just thought that is so sad that he can't go to someone who he would normally want to turn to. And I'm like, so did you ever suffer depression before you left? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so, and maybe part of your depression is the fact that you feel like your family doesn't really accept you and that they're trying to change you. I mean, anytime somebody sends you an article in the mail from the Ensign and, I'm going old school with things in the mail or, emails you or whatever it is, like if you're having that struggle and someone sends that to you, it feels like criticism. It feels like they're saying, I need you to change. Who you are, what you're going through is not really acceptable. It's not okay. It makes me uncomfortable. So let's privilege my comfort over your integrity and just get in line. Just get in line. That's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you so much for that perspective. And it's, as we both know, more common than I think we wish it were. And so what I think we're talking about here, if I were to sort of sum up a few of the larger topics that we've covered in the last few minutes, is not only is this a deeply individual, internal awakening journey, which matters a lot. And it's about the creation of my own narrative so that
Mhm.
I can better understand myself and gain the confidence to move forward with integrity. So that's one side of it, which in and of itself is a lot to deal with. But we're also looking at the very real complexity. And this isn't just in Utah, by the way. I definitely deal with this elsewhere with the consulting that
Mhm.
I do
Mhm.
beyond this. But one of the reasons why I've had my eye on you, waiting for you to, be able to step in and do this a little bit more, is that because you're situated right there in Utah Valley, where the density of Latter-day Saints is so much, right? And so most people that are in that the Mormon corridor, and certainly in Utah, there is that extra pain and
Mhm.
suffering associated with not just the family of origin struggles with people that they know and love, and they don't want to disappoint and they don't want to be
Yeah.
left out. And they also, I mean, there's another little piece that we haven't brought up, is sometimes the family desperately wants to be there and be supportive, but they cease to have anything even to talk about if you have
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And it just
Yes.
gets weird and superficial, and there's the grief around that, because we have to just allow people to be where they are, even in their very best efforts to make space for our growth. All of this is internally very, very distressing, and that's what you and I want to continue to make space for in the processing of, because our Mormonism, for so many of us, it's a deep part of our identity, and one does not easily just walk away from it, right? It doesn't work that
No.
way. Yeah.
No. I mean, it is a huge part of who we are.
Yeah.
Is this. I mean, like I say, Mormons and we are such hard workers. And I do think it comes from that idea of, I mean, and even if you don't have pioneer ancestors, anybody who's had someone in their family convert to the church has had to make big sacrifices. And so we are a people who are willing to give things up and work hard and sacrifice, and there's so much part of that identity. And then sometimes people try to say, well, if you're not active, if you're not this, you're not Mormon. And again, with the ideological purity, we don't get to tell people. Anybody who wants to claim that name Mormon can. And same with feminism. Like, people will say to me, oh, do you really think that those Secret Lives of Mormon Wives are feminists? I'm like, well, they may not practice my brand of feminism, but if they claim that label, I can't say that they're not. So I think that we really do have to understand that these things mean a lot, that word Mormon or Latter-day Saint, or whatever it is, and that people don't do these things lightly. People don't just like, oh, whatever, I'm going to walk away from, the generations of this and piss my family off and whatever. They don't do it lightly. Like, it takes so much courage. It takes so much integrity. And again, that integrity is kind of what drove Joseph Smith to start fresh. And I think that we have to honor people who were on that journey and help them figure out how they can live happily and live with integrity. And because for some people, it gets to the point where they can't do it anymore.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. We'll wrap up right now, y'all. But one of the things I'm thinking about as we sort of close our conversation today is that, as ironic as this may feel, and for those of you listening, this may not feel ironic at all, but there's nothing that Heather and I and others like us could do more for the good of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints than exactly what we're doing. We are helping individuals become psychologically, spiritually, and relationally healthy. And then they bring that health to whatever relationship or whatever building,
Yeah.
professional, personal, whatever. We help people. I'm going to be cheesy and say it because I love the phrase. We're going to help them fulfill the measures of their creations, by golly. That's what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
And however they choose to play that out, whether it be through activity in the church or otherwise,
Yeah.
it will always help them in their relationships, which oftentimes are very, very also deeply embedded in Mormonism. So we are trying to raise the level of consciousness in Mormonism writ large by every single individual that we are working with through the work that Heather and I and others like us are doing. And so anyways, I couldn't be more excited to have you formally being willing to come on here so that others can get to know you. And for those of you that loved what you heard and are interested in, I'm not saying I'm not willing to do individual work. I certainly am. I just am kind of overwhelmed sometimes. And so I'm just so excited to have Heather as a resource. And so reach out to us through the Latter-day Struggles website and let us know if this is something that feels like it resonates with you and you're ready to do some individual work. So thanks, Heather. And you'll be back in the next, I don't know, quarter or so we'll just have some ongoing conversations talking about the Mormon faith expansion experience and how we can continue to be resources to those around us. So thanks for being with us, Heather.
Oh, it was an honor. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Latter-day Struggles. If this podcast has supported your faith journey, we invite you to explore the many ways you can continue your healing and growth with us. On our website, you'll find support and processing groups, marriage and parenting courses, and free resources to support where you are in your faith journey. You can also join Valerie in the live fellowship gatherings throughout the year, where we connect, process the podcast, and build meaningful friendships with others on similar paths. If cost has ever been a barrier, we offer podcast scholarships funded by listener donations. To explore all of these offerings, visit the link in today's show notes or go to latterdaystruggles.com. And if this podcast has been meaningful to you, leaving a 5-star review is one of the most powerful ways to help others find this work. Latter-day Struggles is proud to be part of the Dialogue Podcast Network.
Dialogue Podcast Network.